Here's the 30-second lesson on what legends know. Never practice nunchucks in a crowded room. Never eat chole before a road trip. Always take your shirt off before you iron it. Don't take a call near a swimming pool. And don't forget, saving is not investing. Legends don't just save, they invest in mutual funds. Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
This is Dashera or Vijay Dashmi, so happy Vijay Dashmi to all of you. This is also the day when RSS chief customarily delivers his address to the Swayamsevaks in Nagpur at the RSS headquarters, as Mohan Bhagwat, the current Sarsang Chalak, did today. Now, customarily, we also give you an episode of Karta Clutter on what he said since the Modi government came in fact, since Karta Clutter started, which is 2017. The important thing is, the reason we take notice of it in such a detailed way is that the governments today, the central government and governments in 20 states of India, are either run by wards, students, shishyas of the RSS, or those brought up in the milieu of the RSS, or by those in partnership with, with people who've come out of the RSS. So either the BJP governments or coalitions in which BJP is involved, as say even in faraway Andhra Pradesh, where BJP is a very junior partner. So the RSS's ideas, ideology and thinking underlies everything that happens in governance in India. Now, there are issues there, there are questions there. We've also noted this in the earlier episodes, particularly the last one, that increasingly, as Narendra Modi has become stronger as Prime Minister, as his government has become stronger, and also as the BJP has been able to get votes in his name, the RSS's power has declined. So I did write a national interest at some point, of which I will share a link with you, where we said that the RSS is the weakest it's ever been politically, but it's also the strongest. How does that work? It's the weakest in the sense that the government of the day no longer has to listen to it. It can't give directions to the government of the day, to the BJP government of the day. To that extent, it's weaker than before. And why do we say the weakest ever? Because even when the BJP was not in power, the RSS could then raise points that would make nuisance or cause problems for the government of the day. It can't even do that anymore. That's the reason we said the RSS is the weakest ever. Why is it the strongest? Because it's got the governments in place which now implement all elements of its ideology, all elements of its ideology, all the big things that it wanted, from Ram Mandir to Article 370, etc., and a creeping move towards a uniform civil code. Those were the big demands of the RSS. Those are being met. Also, the RSS boys, their families, relatives, or people who've come out of the RSS structure, they are getting positions in the government, the institutions, from education to intellectual institutions, think tanks, contracts, all kinds of things that come with power. So spoils of power are also coming in. That's the reason we said the RSS is the weakest in terms of its influence over the government, or the ability to make headlines by being a nuisance to the government of the day if it's not a BJP government, because they can't be unsettling their own government. And second, the strongest, because everything they stand for is now being implemented by the Modi government. This year is a little bit different. It's a little bit different because in the run-up of the Lok Sabha elections, it was said by many BJP people, particularly by BJP President JP Nadda, although he does have a view that he's been overinterpreted in what he said, that he did not exactly mean that the BJP no longer needs the RSS's support. But those were statements, and there was a view that the BJP now thought that they could win elections in Narendra Modi's name, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's name, who obviously is very, very popular still, extremely popular, and they maybe did not need the RSS as much as before. It does look like in the parliament elections, and that's what all the reporters who went on the ground said, the RSS was not so active as they might have seen in the past. The BJP did not so well in this election. They fell well short of majority, after which obviously there was some repair work and probably also remorse on both sides, including the RSS. So we saw in Haryana elections that the RSS came out in fullest strength, in fact, as never before, and the result of Haryana election, all of us see. So to that extent, there's been a thaw between the Guru and the Shishya. The Guru in this case is the RSS. Shishya, obviously, the BJP, currently led by Narendra Modi, JP Nadda, Amit Shah, so on and so forth. So that is why this speech which comes after the parliament election, where the BJP suffered a setback of sorts, and then the Haryana victory, which has given the BJP a new wind in its sails, and also which has seen the RSS come out in the fullest strength to work for the BJP. This speech is significant. However, if you listen to this speech, first of all, this speech is shorter than his customary speeches, considerably shorter, not really brief, but considerably shorter, but also because it's a little bit repetitive, because many of the same things have been said before. Because I was listening to the summaries of his speeches in the past, reading up on some of them, and also listening to our earlier episodes of Karta Clutter, and we can see that some of these themes are continuing themes. That's how you would expect it to be, because it is now 10 years. It's been 10 plus years since Narendra Modi has been in power. It's actually the 11th speech delivered by the Sarsang Chalak with the Modi government in power at the center. So how many new things can you bring in? However, there are some very interesting new things. First of all, the emphasis on Bangladesh. It's the first time there's been so much emphasis on another country, and that too, in particular, a neighboring country. In fact, so far in 11 years, this is the 11th year, there hasn't been so much reference or so much emphasis on Pakistan as well. Even in the year that Afghanistan fell and the Taliban took over, and Imran Khan started talking all that he started saying, there wasn't that much of an emphasis on Pakistan. Bangladesh this year is a very abiding theme, and that's because that's done through what is being seen as the fate of the Hindus there. That's important, and I will come to that in more detail as we go along. So the states going to the polls, as we know, are Jharkhand and Maharashtra. So the speech actually starts with a tribute to Ahilyabai Holkar, the builder of many temples and restorer of temples, dharamshalas, including, by the way, the Kashi Vishwanath temple in Varanasi. So he talks about her in detail because this is also 300th anniversary. There is a continuing complaint about wokeism, cultural Marxism, etc. However, this time there is also a reference to them being able to find accomplices in democracy. That's a bit like, the word is not used, but that's a little bit like going in the direction of the metaphor of urban Naxals. Then conservatism, social conservatism comes in. There is demand for cultural unity. Social conservatism comes in. This is what he had said in one of the earlier speeches as well. The need for control over what the OTTs are showing. This time, however, there is also demand for controls or laws to control what people are watching on their phones. Does it refer to what people are watching on Instagram, WhatsApp, or just clips from maybe some of the semi-porn channels that go around? Because he's talking about obscenity as well. Then he also talks quite significantly about Anupul Chandra Thakur, who was born in Himayatnagar in Bangladesh, but then shifted to Deoghar, and that's where his big ashram is. He started the Satsang Andolan, as it was called, and his ashram now is in Deoghar in Jharkhand. So that is a reference to a Hindu hero from Jharkhand. And also there is a reference to the great tribal hero from Jharkhand, Birsa Munda, who is now popularly called Bhagwan Birsa Munda. This is the 150th year of Bhagwan Birsa Munda. So these three references, Ahilyabai Holkar being from Maharashtra, Birsa Munda being a tribal from Jharkhand, and Anukul Chandra Thakur then having a very strong spiritual and physical Jharkhand link. These also tell you that the RSS is now back to focusing on electoral politics as well, without saying so. There is a great deal of emphasis on Bangladesh. He says, for example, basically, without naming the US, he's blaming the US, and he says, जिसको पता है, सब समझ जाएंगे कौन country है, that people who are wise can figure out which countries are involved in this. And he says there were problems in Bangladesh. It's not as if on the ground there were no problems, but there wasn't such a problem that it could have led to such a large commotion, implying that there was nothing, there were problems on the ground, but nothing to justify the removal or the overthrowing of a government there, of an elected government there. And that is wrong. Then he says, look at the talk that's coming out of Bangladesh. There are people saying we should now build a bigger friendship with Pakistan because Pakistan's nukes will give us protection from India. And he says this is a country that India helped liberate. He's very careful. He's not saying this is the country that India liberated. He's saying this is a country that India helped liberate. If they are talking like this, or if people there are talking like this, then you can imagine who's behind this. And then he says somebody is behind this narrative. Which countries stand to benefit from this? That's obvious. You can draw your own conclusions. I would say that his reference is to the US in this case. And he says these countries also want this replicated in India. Because they don't like the idea that India may become very strong. If India becomes much stronger, this will make many selfish interests suffer, and that's why they want to limit, regulate, and calibrate India's growth and keep it within a limit so India doesn't become too powerful. And that's where he says expressions like deep state, wokeism, cultural Marxism, these all become relevant because all of these then combine to undermine all cultures and traditions. He's not saying only Hindu culture and tradition. These get together to undermine all cultures and traditions. These capture all institutions, which is education, other institutions, and also importantly, the media. And through these forces work. And his implication is that these forces were behind the upheaval in Bangladesh as well. And he's warning that we should not allow this to happen in India. Then it holds forth in some detail about what's happened to the Hindus in Bangladesh. And he says the Hindu majority came under attack, and good thing is that they got united, they pushed back, and that's how they've been able to find some protection. And he says even our traditional wisdom, the Shastras tell us that if you are weak, even the divine shall not help you. देव भी कमजोर की सुरक्षा नहीं करते हैं. That said, the idea that what's happened in Bangladesh could be repeated in India, that the forces who, according to him, brought about this transformation or this upheaval in Bangladesh would also like to stage such a thing in India is an important thing. Now, we know the RSS often has similar fears, but for him to express this with Narendra Modi is in power in his 11th year, I thought is significant. Then he's talking about how do these forces work. He said ours is a large society. So once these forces of deep state, wokeism, cultural Marxism capture all institutions, then they can play into our diversities. Because when there are diversities, there are different communities, there are injustices also. It's not a perfect world. And he says if they can widen these divisions and actually convert your diversity into a weakness or play on these injustices as if to say that the legal system is too weak or the constitutional system is too weak, you can't get justice through that, you have to do something on the street. Again, the reference is to Bangladesh or the implication is Bangladesh. Then he says, उसके बाद मंत्र विप्लव हो सकता है. Now, mantra viplav, I checked with my friends in the RSS because that's an expression that he's used in the past as well. So, what is the meaning of mantra viplav? So, mantra viplav in the RSS definition is when somebody uses, I thought mantra viplav means you do sloganeering or you repeat the same message again and again and create instability or create a revolt against the state or against a political power. It isn't quite that, it's more nuanced. It's a bit like when somebody uses cynical cunning as a tool for one's own benefit, overriding the common good of culture and society. So he said that these diversities and these minor divisions or sense of injustice, which is natural in any society, which exists in our country as well, and if you convince enough people, because you control these institutions and the message through them, including the media, then you can convince people that you will not get justice through the legal system because it's too weak, and that's when these upheavals can be staged. How do these forces work, he says? He described these forces in his last year's Dashera speech as Asuric forces, that is, demonic forces, because Dashera is the day when you burn the demons, you kill and burn the demons. His Asuric Shaktis then were wokeism and cultural Marxism. Now he's added deep state to it. So he keeps up with the trends, right? He says these then use vicharon ki vikruti, that is, a perversion of thought processes, perversion or distortion of thought processes. It's really hard Hindi, so I'm trying my best to translate it as accurately as possible. And he says, विचारों की विकृति से असंतोष उत्पन्न करना, जिससे हम अपने ही लोगों को गाली दें और उग्र बनकर एक दूसरे का श्रद्धा और अनादर शुरू कर दें. What he means is that through this distortion of thought processes, these forces create popular disenchantment and anger, so that we start abusing or attacking our own fellow citizens and then get angry and get disillusioned with our system or the processes of governance, and that leads to anarchy. And he says anarchy is something that we really need to worry about, because in the past, it's not possible, it's not so easy for nations to have wars with each other. So any other nation which wants to undermine you will not be able to go to war with you, but will use these forces to undermine you. Now, to think that the Americans, who are our closest strategic allies today, Modi government's closest strategic allies today, would like to bring down this government or would try to work on a regime change in India, as they might have done, according to the Sarsang Chalak, in Bangladesh, that's a bit of a stretch from my point of view. I'm giving you my opinion. However, that's what he's saying. And he's saying that these forces then work on the basis of what they call as alternate politics. And this working through alternate politics, which becomes a camouflage for these forces, this is not a conspiracy theory. There are books coming out of Western nations which are talking about this. They themselves are concerned about this. And we should look at what's happening in our border states. And he looks at the Northeast. He says Bihar se leke Northeast tak, the entire eastern zone. He talks about Punjab. He talks about Kerala also. He throws in Kerala this time. He talks about rising drug addiction in these places, and he attributes all of it to these evil foreign forces. He says anything can get people angry, even road rage can get people angry. But can you then respond to that anger with gundagardi or gundaism or by street violence? You have to work within the system. He says, however, that sometimes when you are under threat, and once again the reference to Hindus in Bangladesh, sometimes when you are under threat, it's important to unite at that point and to protect yourselves until the state arrives, which means until the police arrives or the fire brigade arrives or the state arrives, because it's the responsibility of the state to protect you. But you cannot be vulnerable until the state arrives. You should be able to protect yourselves. And that is where he makes reference to Ambedkar again. In his last year's speech, he had recommended that we read Ambedkar's 1949 speech, one of his long speeches, where Ambedkar held forth in detail on bhakti or idol worship of leaders. We had talked about this in detail the last year. This time, he's quoting from Ambedkar the expression that he used, that is the grammar of anarchy, because right now his concern is anarchy. And again, because it's his most electoral speech. I didn't say political, I said electoral speech, because it looks like now the RSS is again foursquare behind the BJP, and vocally so. He's talked at length about the RJ Kar hospital incident in West Bengal. And he said, first of all, such things should not happen. In a good society, these things should not happen. And this is a society where somebody had tried to disrobe Draupadi and Mahabharat happened. But after that, how attempts were made to play down that crime. And also, he says the linkage between politics and crime. उसमें टालम टाल करने की कोशिश की गई, which means an effort was made to bury that crime or to understate that crime. और अपराध और राजनीति, that means crime and politics, a nexus came up. That is a very bad thing. Now that is important coming from Sarsang Chalak, because West Bengal is also where the BJP and the TMC are always at daggers drawn. He's also used the expression which has sometimes caused controversy in Bengal, used in different contexts. He's called it up Sanskriti, which I might translate as decadent culture or decadence. Now, since as journalists and analysts, we also look at change, we've seen one thing change in emphasis and also direction over these years in Sarsang Chalak's speeches. That is on population. He started out talking of population explosion, that there was uncontrolled population increase that was causing problems and population control measures should come in. That we've noticed over the past 3 years has now been nuanced as population imbalance. So last year he said when there is population imbalance, countries have instability, they break up. He used the examples of Sudan, East Timor, and Kosovo. So once again, this time he's talking about population imbalance. However, now he's not even talking about population imbalance because one community or any community might be producing more babies than other communities. Now he's talking about population imbalance through immigration from Bangladesh. Now that is something that even Prime Minister Modi, other BJP leaders have been talking about in their campaign in Jharkhand. So once again, that is directed at Jharkhand and that has limited appeal. However, it does seem to me now that the RSS leadership also has very clearly understood that India's problem, in fact, the world's problem right now, the growing world's problem, the developing world's problem now have become the same as the developed world's problems, which is not that too many babies are being produced, but which is that too few babies are being produced. The Chinese example has now just come up most starkly, and that means your populations are actually aging, your working age population is going down, and a renewal is now taking place. And a country like India could become old much before it became even middle class or lower middle class in its incomes. And that is something to which the RSS is also responding by moderating its message or nuancing its message from population control, need for population control, to worrying about population imbalance. Again, not because of more births in India, but because of what they see as illegal immigration from Bangladesh. So in so many ways, Bangladesh also is the flavor of the year.